Hello, welcome, Hello. Welcome to the Pittsburgh City Council budget hearings. I'm Councilmember Barb Warwick, and I chair the Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure. For this hearing, we will be hearing from the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. So before I ask Domi to come up to the table, I want to mention we are joined by Councilwoman Erica Strasburger, and and that's it. Yeah, so maybe others will join us later. At any rate, if the Domi team wants to come up to the table.
For me? Ready for me?
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So while you're coming up, our budget director, Pete McDevitt, will give a brief overview of the department.
Thank you. The Department of Mobility and Infrastructure has a mission of to provide the physical mobility necessary to enable the social and economic mobility of the people of Pittsburgh through the management, design, improvement, and operation of the public right-of-way. A quick overview. The Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is comprised of three bureaus: Planning, Policy, and Permitting, Traffic Operations, and Project Design and Delivery. A quick position summary: there is a total of 119 full-time positions in the 2025 operating budget, which is an increase of 1. There were a number of swaps in the budget, which totaled a savings of $229. And there's that one added position is a Intelligent Transportation Systems Technology Manager. That comes out to a total increase of $411,000, or about 3.4%. We're going to be hearing, there are some union positions, and you'll see this throughout the budget, similar to last year. AFSCME 2037 has 0% salary increases due to the labor agreement expiring at the end of this year. We do have money budgeted for that increase. It is just not reflective currently. A quick summary of non-personnel changes. Overall, there is a $1,048,815 increase in non-personnel budgets. Those highlights are $242,000 decrease in professional services, $1.25 million increase in property services, and a $41,500 increase in supplies. I'm not going to go through all of them because Domi has the largest capital budget in the city, but I will just summarize that they have over $53 million worth of capital projects. And we've talked a lot about TIP projects. I'm sure you have this at some point in your presentation, but for every dollar that they spend of city money, they bring in a number of dollars of outside money, so they really are able to make our dollars stretch further. And then we also included the fee schedule in there for you to review. That has the 2024 fees and the 2025 proposed changes. Domi has a lot of those, so again, I'm not going to go through all of them. And that is it for my highlights, and I will move over and give Angie his place.
Okay, great. So if I guess just go down the line and introduce yourselves, and then we can do the presentation.
Eric Setzler, Chief Engineer.
Evan Gross, Fiscal and Contracting Supervisor.
Jeff Skellican, Deputy Director.
Kim Lucas, Director.
Angie Martinez, Assistant Director of Planning, Policy, and Permits.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you for that overview of our department. As you heard, we are the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. Our mission is to provide the physical mobility for the people of Pittsburgh so that they can achieve the social and economic mobility that they deserve. And our number one goal is to make sure that nobody is killed or seriously injured just traveling on our streets trying to get where they need to go. Here's an overview of our org chart. As we just learned, we have three primary bureaus: Planning, Policy, and Permitting, Project Design and Delivery, and Traffic Operations, and we also are supported by our Administrative Bureau. In 2025, Domi will have the fourth largest budget overall. That's the combination of the capital and operating budgets. And as we heard, we have a large capital budget, and that is supported by the 7th largest operating budget. You really stole my thunder over there, Pete. DOMI is responsible for a lot of assets. We have over 1,000 miles of roadway, nearly 150 city-owned bridges, over 800 sets of public steps, and that number climbs to over 1,000 when we're talking about jump walks, almost 40,000 streetlights, and more than 600 signalized intersections. This department of nearly 120 individuals is responsible for more assets than any other department in the city of Pittsburgh. You'll hear more today about some improvements that we are making and have in the pipeline for these assets, and I'm really proud of the team as they're going to go through some of their successes from 2024 and the look ahead and goals for 2025.
Thank you, Director. We're going to get started with the 2024 achievements of the Planning, Policy, and Permitting Bureau. So when I put together this presentation, I pulled from our 2024 capital budget presentation to council, and I was able to pull over this slide verbatim. So going into 2024, our policy priorities were to support the Mayor's Vision Zero initiative. That happened. So this year, the mayor signed on to a Vision Zero commitment, and City Council passed a Vision Zero ordinance. That gave DOMI and other city departments and outside agencies a charge and a mandate to actually begin working together proactively to achieve the goal of zero fatalities or serious injuries on our streets. Last year, we also promised that we would make advancements towards operationalizing automated red light enforcement. With the leadership of Councilperson Strasburger and our Vision Zero Enforcement Subcommittee, we introduced local legislation to authorize locally that work. We've also been working to prepare an RFP that we hope to put out to bid in 2025 to actually get these devices to automatically enforce red light running on our streets. Last year, we also talked about DOMI's goal to improve FaceTime and transparency with the public and council. We had the pleasure of being in front of council, I believe in March, to present our high injury network and kick off our Vision Zero progress, as well as fulfilling for the first time the Complete Streets Advisory Group's requirement to present a biennial report to council. 2024, we kicked off Vision Zero and CSAG, our Complete Streets Advisory Group, and much of what we'll be looking to do in 2025 is thinking about how we weave together that work that's happening within city and other departments with the community's role and participation in advancing safe streets and Vision Zero. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in some later slides. Finally, last year we talked about the need to improve our right-of-way permitting, utility coordination, and paving. I don't think there's anybody in the city of Pittsburgh, whether you're driving, walking, rolling, or using a mobility-assisted device, that would say that we couldn't be doing better to make sure that the activities in our public space are happening to the best standard and with the highest quality of safety around work zones. So I'm pleased to present some of the process changes and new fees that we'll be moving forward with in 2025 that I believe achieve these goals. As I've already said, we've made a number of advancements in our Vision Zero work. I've chose to highlight just one improvement. So we have established 4 working groups within Vision Zero. One of those is our fatal crash response group. And what this group does is it convenes within 48 hours of a fatal crash. Our municipal traffic engineer, Mike Malik, our planning manager, Panini Chowdhury, as well as representatives from public safety, first responders, and PennDOT when the fatality is on a state road. So the purpose of convening this group is so that there can be conversation around swift action that we might be able to take at a location where there's a fatality. The greatest predictor of a crash is a crash that has happened. And so by taking a moment to look at where these crashes are happening, we give ourselves an opportunity to talk about what types of improvements we can install to prevent that from happening again in the future. This is a photo of a location, Boulevard of the Allies, which is a PennDOT road, and Marion Street. Boulevard of the Allies is a PennDOT road. There were 2 fatal crashes at this location from left turns from the boulevard onto Marion that are prohibited. After the second crash, our group came together and identified some quick improvements. You can see in the upper left-hand corner the new lane striping that has been added and additional signage to further reinforce that left turns are not legal there except for emergency vehicles. And these are quick improvements we were able to install. Glad to say that the group continues to talk about potentially longer-term, more permanent solutions to address this specific intersection. And of course, this is just one example. So think about the way that this work scales to every location across the city where we have a fatal crash. In 2024, we also built stronger bridges and relationships with our community partners. We played a supporting role to Pittsburghers for Public Transit, Access Mob, AARP, and Bike Pittsburgh, who organized the city's participation for the first time in a week without driving. I think it's a fantastic demonstration of how DOMI, who controls our infrastructure and our assets, our design and delivery, all of that work is so important. But when it comes to behavior change and when it comes to changing culture around roadway safety and respect for all roadway users, really putting the community at the forefront of that conversation is where I think we see the most power. So I was excited that this was a successful event and that the city was able to sort of stand behind our advocates and community leaders to promote this event. We also had our first full year of CSAG, our Complete Streets Advisory Group. I've already talked a little bit about the work of that group. In 2025, one of the goals that we are really seeking to do is to improve our recruitment and to build an advisory group that is more reflective of the diverse needs and population of Pittsburgh residents. So today I'm here to encourage members of council and anyone else who might be listening. If you have an interest in roadway safety and if you have a transportation story, think about joining and volunteering our Complete Streets Advisory Group. This group is only strengthened by more diverse representation. To highlight some highlights from our Safe Routes to School program, this was year 2 of our Safety Town program where we work to teach roadway safety and walking safety, bike safety to students. This year we partnered with Phillips Recreation Center and at the end of that very successful week, we actually went ahead and we purchased for city parks the material that they would need to be able to host their own Safety Town program throughout the year. So this program has expanded. Our 2024 Safe Routes to School Walk and Roll to School Day was larger than ever, and we continue to build on new programs. This year we introduced a new sort of micro grant for Ruby Bridges Walks to School Day. Our curbside management team installed 10 new shelters and bus shelters and deposited $150,000 into our Shade Tree Trust Fund. We worked for the first time to install 3 city shelters along PRT's light rail stops in the South Side. And notably, our curbside team worked with Pittsburghers for Public Transit to do bus stop audits in the North Side, Squirrel Hill, and the South Side neighborhoods. The benefit of this is that we're able to sort of harness the community and advocacy groups' interest in promoting safer streets to helping DOMI sort of look at the site constraints at locations for shelters. And then we're also allowing them insight into our own process, which based on their feedback, we have heard has been very helpful for them to understand better how we do our work and the constraints that we're up against. Our curbside management team also operationalized ticket by mail for smart loading zones. What that means is that for certain violations, a parking authority attendant does not have to pull over when they catch a violation, get out of their car, print a ticket, put it on the windshield, but rather that these stationary plate reading devices are able to capture the violation, process it, validate it, and then send the ticket to the registered vehicle owner by mail. This is a tremendous efficiency for staffing and also for equity because it means that all of these locations are being enforced at all times and not just when a parking authority attendant happens to be stopping by. It works. We know it works. In fact, when we look at the stats of our Smart Loading Zone program, we've seen a 75% increase in parks under 15 minutes, which means people are using those loading zones for loading and they're turning over so that the space is open for the next user. And even more importantly, we've seen a 95% reduction in double parking, which means that our streets are actually safer as a result of better curbside management practices. Our work with the vendor has been very successful. The partnership that we've built with the parking authority through this program has been tremendous. So good, in fact, that we decided to do some additional piloting of automated enforcement and ticket by mail for parking in the bike lane and no stopping areas. That work began over the summer, so it's a little bit too early to promote or discuss the outcomes of those pilots, but the fact that they've happened at all, I think, is tremendous. And then quick note, next week, council will have in front of them legislation to move the vendor contract for the Smart Loading Zone program from the city to the parking authority. And I want to highlight that as a success. What that means is that our DOMI curbside management team took on a task to improve efficiency of our curbside space. They developed policy, fee structure, we operationalized the work, and now that it's been proven successful, we're able to transfer that back to the agency that's actually more appropriate to be able to maintain it. Our code and permit staff do a tremendous amount of work making sure that we're enabling work by utilities or developers to make changes in our public space. We've seen a 15% increase in our right-of-way permits from 2021, and the largest increase of that has been due to opening permits from our utilities who are improving and upgrading their assets. We performed over 23,000 inspections for permits, and we found nearly 800 right-of-way code violations. With that, I'll pass it to Eric Setzler to talk about project design and delivery.
Just quickly before, I do want to note that we're joined by Council Member Wilson and Charland. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Project Design and Delivery Bureau has been busy. We got a lot going on. Of course, we have the Streets and Bridge and Structures divisions doing engineering work, paving, construction, and our new bridge maintenance division. So I'm really just touching on a couple of highlights. There's a lot of stuff going on from big projects down to very small things on a day-to-day basis. So far, we're up to 27 miles of streets paved this year. That'll go up a bit more because we're still wrapping up some stuff. We got a dozen concrete, brick, or blockstone streets repaired. 13 sidewalk projects with our Critical Sidewalk Gaps program. So that's over about 2.3 miles of sidewalks that we have reconstructed this year, which is a big win for people just trying to get where they need to go. 6 steps projects have been completed this year. We've got a couple more still coming up this fall before we're out of time. One thing that I'm happy to highlight is that we have been to 61 different bridges this year doing some kind of maintenance, repair, routine maintenance, or any kind of work. So that's a great number of bridges that we've been able to work on. And we've got a number of wall and landslide projects that have gone on this year as well. Next slide. Just going to highlight just a couple of our major projects that have been in construction this year. The Davis Avenue pedestrian bridge is coming along nicely. It will wrap up next year, but it's going really heavy this year. Charles Anderson Memorial Bridge, we're excited about that one. It is underway. Our Andover Terrace landslide, our interim stabilization was finished this year. The Brule Street landslide, we built a wall up there. That is done. Our 3 locations for Mount Washington for our large FEMA grant project are coming along well. They're wrapping up. The top photo there shows the work up at William Street and Cola Street. We're building a pretty large retaining wall up there. The BRT project, that of course the city is in partnership with PRT on that. The downtown work is coming along well and getting close. The Stanton McCandless step replacement up in Lawrenceville, that's a project we've been in design for a while, but it is underway as we speak. And then the full reconstruction of Chestnut Street, that started in 23, but it wrapped up this year. I also wanted to highlight just some work that we've been able to get into this year with in-house designing and engineering, building our capacity. A couple of projects of note. The Chestnut Street reconstruction was fully designed and a bid package was put together by our street engineers in Domi, so we didn't have to get any consultants involved in that, so that saves us a lot of money. Brook Street, we had a culvert pipe that we had to replace. We were under some violation notices from the county DEP, or County Conservation District and Health Department, but once again our engineers developed plans, actually applied for 2 different permits and obtained those environmental permits, and then we partnered with Public Works to actually do the construction. And then our engineers in our bridge and structures division have been doing structural analyses, updating for some of our smaller bridges, and we've been able to accomplish all that work in-house, which has been great both for the development of our young engineers and, as I say, for keeping our costs down and moving things through on an efficient basis. So I will pass it off to Mike.
Thank you, Eric. Before I begin, talking about 2024 for the Traffic Bureau, I want to acknowledge that everything I'm going to speak about is on the shoulders of a dedicated staff of laborers, signing and pavement marking specialists, foremen, electricians, supervisors, clerical staff, engineers, engineering technicians. And so they care. They care a lot about their work. I'm deeply proud of our team's work and everything they do for the city, and I hope you all see that too. I wouldn't begin with anything but traffic calming, right? That is, everyone talks about it. It comes up in every article, every chance you hear. #1 requested service in the city, increased budget, so on and so forth. Everyone wants traffic calming on their streets. Over the course of the year, we did 12 projects, traditional traffic calming projects. But what I want to draw attention to is that this is a new program. It started in 2019, and it's evolved every year a little bit, piece by piece. Putting speed humps on neighborhood streets is not enough. You know it, like everyone here knows it. And so that funding line for neighborhood traffic calming needs to support multiple buckets of projects, not just slowing down traffic on residential streets. And so I want to get into what that looks like for me today. The first bucket of projects is traditional traffic calming, speed humps on streets. So we did 12 of those projects last year. 5 years ago, everyone hated them. Now everyone loves them. And I think it's the easiest way the return on investment is high. They work, it drastically reduces vehicle speeds, which leads to an improvement in safety, which all of this is going towards Vision Zero, right? Like this is what these projects are for. 12 projects last year. But that's not the whole thing, because if we only do these projects, these speed reduction projects, we are missing where people are getting hurt and killed the most, which is the intersection. And so with that funding, we also complete what I want to refer to here to moving forward is pedestrian safety projects. These are crosswalks, these are painted bump outs, these are concrete bump outs. Every year we are trying to find new devices, new pieces of equipment that we can put in the field to try and meet the need at the intersections, because ultimately when people want traffic calming, they think they want speed humps, but they don't necessarily want them. They just want to feel safe when they're going about their day. They want their kids to be safe. And so we have to diversify and rethink how we're spending this money. And so this year's the beginning of that. We did 6 projects. Just all these are countermeasures, typically spot improvements at intersections to focus on pedestrian safety. 6 projects completed. And then finally, also with this funding, we have to take a look at some of our, previously the neighborhood traffic calming program avoided corridors because the idea was that corridors are more complex, more challenging than just putting a speed hump here and speed hump there. And so we are going to be these are going to be low quantity, high quality projects where we focus on our corridors, where we see our severe injury and fatal crashes. We completed 5 corridor safety projects this year. So what's that? A grand total of, help me out here, 23 projects that I would like to just call Vision Zero projects. They have one goal. These corridor safety projects are going to be where we have our biggest impact. Every one of these projects had some form of public engagement, be it a meeting or a public walkthrough. And this is also where we take an opportunity to look at our roadways and see, are we allocating space appropriately based on the needs? Namely, budgeting space for vehicles versus space for storing vehicles versus space for multimodal users. And with that being said, the Penn Circle two-way conversion project is on here. The URA held that contract, but city staff was involved from design through construction to close out. So we do count that as part of our project workload. That took a lot of time for us. 2 miles of additional bike infrastructure in the city of Pittsburgh. So when I look at my engineering team, it's half Vision Zero and then half traffic signals. No one talks about traffic signals. No one cares about traffic signals. So someone cares about traffic signals. I care. This is most of our capital funding goes to these. We own, I don't know how many we own, 600 plus traffic signals in the city. Like all of our other infrastructure, they're outdated. They're not serving our residents well. Through our CBD Phase 4 and our just regular capital signal improvement program, we replaced 11 traffic signals in the city of Pittsburgh. That's approximately 2% of our inventory. And we know like these projects, they aren't attractive, they aren't sexy, but they do have a demonstrated 33% reduction in crashes, and that's just updating infrastructure. Proven countermeasures that work at the places where you need it the most, the higher volume intersections. Domi is alongside the ride. Oh, you mind going back, Pete? Sorry, Angie. Nice. Domi is, again, we don't hold the BRT downtown loop contract. We did not hold the Penn Circle two-way conversion contract. We own the signals. And so every time there's a troubleshooting issue, every time we inspect them at the end, we're there along for construction issues. So there is a lot of staff time. And this is also, again, I'm a broken record. I will acknowledge that everything I'm talking about here is done by a staff of 12 people for the whole city. Signals, Vision Zero, everything. That's no one's fault that we're that understaffed, but that's a reality, and I'm really, really proud of them. So I just talked about traffic signal construction. On this slide, we have reference to the non-construction. There's probably about $50 million in projects on this slide that are advancing in design. Mostly federal. These are federal supported projects. They're on the tip. Again, 4 people do signal work for the city. I'm also proud of how this work, like Pete mentioned, we have many, many opportunities to stretch our dollar through grant funding. So this year we earned, along with the help from Angie's team, we earned $3.3 million of grant funding to replace 7 traffic signals. The Green Light Go program is a 20% match. The Early program is 100% funded by the state. And so this, the only way we're going to keep up with our inventory is pursuing these grants. And then traffic operations. This is going to be a big year for us. This has been a big year. We are going to be getting construction of a traffic management center in 2025. The design plans are done. So that was an accomplishment for 2024. We're also trying to lay the groundwork for us to be a more technologically savvy city when it comes to our traffic management. So I'll get into that in future slides, but I'm really proud of our work. Thank you. Oh, streetlights, that's me too. I'm not done. No one, Denny, if you're watching, man, no, people care deeply about streetlights. And this is a project. The LED conversion project is going to be under contract early next year. How long has that been? 2018? It's been a long time. We're replacing every single overhead, Cobra head. We're not doing decorative. Cobra head luminaires have been replaced. It's about 33,000. We're also in the process of procuring a software platform that will allow us to manage these streetlights remotely as opposed to how we do it today, which is on the ground. Massive change for the city. Come on. I'm also proud of how much in-house work we do. We design about 2 to 3 of our traffic signals in-house a year. This is the first year that at the city traffic shop, our electricians built a traffic signal. We've had 10 electricians of full staffing for about 2 years now, so they have these capabilities. I don't know how much money that saves us, but it's substantial. Bright and Jacksonia, they built from the ground up. Not the ground up. Someone else did the foundations, but they did the wiring, the setting of units. They have these capabilities. They're really talented. And then our signage and pavement marking shop. Every single traffic calming project you have, the signs comes from them. So while they're trying to maintain all of the signs, they're also doing work from our capital program too. And we can stretch our capital funding really far based on in-house staff. I'm finally done.
I do want to say we've been joined by Councilwoman Smith online. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to do a quick overview of the 2025 capital budget for DOMI. I know Pete mentioned that we had $53 million coming this year from the capital budget. That represents 29 unique projects. Of the $29 million of bond funding DOMI's getting, 2/3 of that is going to the paving program. So there's a big investment in paving next year. A fund matching number this year is down to 70 cents on the dollar, but that's primarily because Charles Anderson has a drastic reduction in TIP funding this year, which also drives the next point. The capital budget is dropping by $32 million, but that's because Charles Anderson was primarily budgeted in 2024, and there's only a little piece coming online this year. And overall, outside of Charles Anderson, our capital budget increased by $10 million. And I will pass this on to Eric to talk about what he wants to do or his objectives for 2025.
Thanks, Evan. So, technology. So as we look towards 2025, I'll start with bridge management. Bridges is still our big, one of our big focus areas, our biggest focus area. And really, we're just, continuing. Most of these projects, they're all multi-year projects, so this is not new information for the most part. This budget year, it's just continuing things we've been working on for quite some time. We have really been leaning into the TIP and just getting more and more projects going. Quite honestly, I think we probably are managing maybe twice as many projects as we ought to be managing if we were a little more rational based on our staff capacity. But, I feel like with the situation that we're in with our bridges and where we've been over the last couple decades, like we really don't have a choice. Like the money's available. We have to tackle these projects and we have to move forward to do significant upgrades to our 145 city-owned bridges. In 2025, we'll have 3 major bridges in construction, which are going the Charles Anderson Bridge, the adjacent Panther Hollow Overpass, not to be confused with the Panther Hollow Bridge that I'll mention in a moment. And the Davis Avenue Bridge, which I mentioned earlier, is almost done, but it will be opening up next year, so we're really excited about that. We have 13 significant bridge projects that are in design right now. So this is a case where there's a lot of, kind of behind the scenes work. We are working hard. Our consultants are working hard. But you're not seeing a lot out in the field yet, but give it a couple years, and there's going to be bridge construction everywhere. We have 4 new projects that we've been putting our agreements together this year. They will start design in 2025. That would be a preservation project for the Bloomfield Bridge. That bridge was built in the late 80s. It's not that old, but it's right at the time where we need to do a little bit of work on it now so that it will stay in good shape in the future. We don't want to let it deteriorate, as unfortunately, we have done that sometimes in the past. And we're going to be doing a lot of work over in the Mount Washington, in the Mount Washington area. There's 2 bridges on P.J. McCardle Roadway and 1 on Sycamore Street that we are going to be doing some preservation and rehabilitation on. So those will be starting design coming up. We also will be starting some additional projects. As I said, we need to continue to be aggressive. The Corliss Tunnel has a preservation project. It's on the tip and in this budget for 2026 funding. So we want to start our agreements in 25 so that hopefully we are in a position in 26 to actually start engineering work. And with our bridge preservation line item from the tip, we do intend to identify several additional bridge preservation projects to propose to SPC to start some additional design work. Sticking with bridges, but turning more to the maintenance side, coming up in this 2025 budget, there is $1.1 million of operating funds. This is the 3rd year in a row that we've had that line item in our operating budget. It bumped up a bit from the previous year. This funds, we spend a not insignificant portion of that doing bridge inspection for our pedestrian bridges and our under 20-foot bridges. Those are our responsibility. They don't go through PennDOT as some of our other bridges do for inspection. We're always doing load ratings or analyses on those, and some of those smaller ones we fund once again in-house, not through the PennDOT contract. Bridge washing, as I get to the right side of this slide, we will be doing bridge washing with our bridge maintenance division this year, which we're very excited about. We do expect there will be some that will continue to be contracted out for some of the higher or more complex bridges that our crews won't be able to get to. Other things, other repair work, seal replacements, drainage repairs, deck repairs, just miscellaneous things. We have $700,000 in capital funds also for these purposes. Those are, a lot of urgent repairs. We get bridge inspection reports back and we have something we need to deal with. This money is available for that. And then just other, maybe slightly larger or longer term repairs that we need to do to our bridges. We've been talking about the bridge maintenance division for a while, and we are making a lot of progress this year. It's still kind of behind the scenes, but we've been busy hiring staff. We have a couple trucks that we've purchased. We are renovating some space for these folks to have a home base. The traffic division, Mike's nice enough to let us locate down there on Liberty Avenue. And they are going to be getting going, doing some of that bridge washing, some seal replacements, and concrete drainage repairs. Really the goal is to start simple and build capacity and expertise as we go. Go to the next slide. So that's all the stuff that we're doing in bridges, which is a lot. And yet I feel like there is a large unmet need. We put in $3.5 million of capital requests beyond what was funded, and those are not in the budget. Those were mainly things based on the WSP Bridge Asset Management Report. They recommended things that we ought to be doing in the near future, like the next 2 years. And really, most of those repairs are kind of where that $3.5 million of requests came from. There's certainly more stuff beyond that didn't make their kind of high priority list. This is the 2nd year in a row that some of those specific small projects were not funded. Certainly we'll get to some of that with the funding that you saw on the previous page, but unfortunately I don't think that we have that recommendation on how to kind of get ahead with our bridges, and I think we're making a lot of progress, but not progress to the point that we really want to. So that continues to be a challenge. Got a picture over here of a beautiful bridge. You all know this is the Panther Hollow Bridge, and you all know that we had to close it. These are the things that come up, unfortunately, and it's tough because we go through this, this annual capital budget process, and we're here again this year. but I feel like to some degree it's not representative of the needs that we have. We are still waiting for our consultant to finish their analysis. They're actually going back out in a couple weeks here to get some more data. They have to climb the bridge now because they closed it, so they can't put a bridge inspection snoop around it anymore. So they will be out there with ropes and harnesses climbing to get more information. But honestly, our costs are unknown at this point. The funding is unknown at this point. It's not in the budget. We have had some preliminary conversations with PennDOT, and I think they're going to be good partners with us, but we don't know what our ask is quite yet. But kind of despite the fact that it's not in the budget, you know, we're going to fix it. We'll figure it out somehow. We're going to fix it. All right, next slide. So moving away from bridges, of course, it's a big thing, but it's only one of the things that we are doing in my bureau. This will be a big year for some city steps projects. We have 3 bigger projects that have been in planning for a bit. I mentioned Stanton McCandless earlier because it is actually under construction already, but it'll be going into next year. Fraser Street steps just went out to bid, advertised in OpenGov, I think yesterday, and then Downing Street in Polish Hill also. And then we have some funding in the capital budget for smaller repair projects and things that we can do throughout the years on a variety of other steps. Our big federal earmark for city steps is moving along. We will be in design during 2025 and 2026. Another thing I have at the bottom that I'll highlight is we have been doing inspections of our elevated steps, using some of our staff engineers and even calling on some wonderful interns at times to get out and make sure that we are getting eyes on some of these and starting to build an inspection program for these because, you know, they are elevated structures and they do need to be looked at from time to time. Talking about landslides and walls for a little bit. Everybody loves landslides. We do have some significant projects in construction this coming year. 3 landslides up in Riverview Park. We've been doing work up there for a while now, and it continues to give us more opportunities to do projects. Our Ruthven Street retaining wall project will be going next year. Serpentine Drive is coming through design nicely and should be able to go to construction next year. The funding is in the budget. The Herndon Street landslide should be moving into construction next year, and the picture here, the retaining wall at Warrington and Bogston, we have a plan for that, and we have funding in the budget as well for that one. A couple of projects in design, the permanent repair for Andover Terrace, and we are starting up a project to work on a landslide in Emerald View Park near Grandview Park. We also have some general money in this area as well to handle the things that come up and you know, tackle some smaller things throughout the year. Another thing I'm excited to highlight is that we have been diving into an inventory and inspection program for our walls. We have a new project manager focusing on walls and slides this year who started, and she has been able to focus on this some and get this effort off the ground along with some of our staff engineers. We are embarking on an effort to field inspect all approximately 833 retaining walls that we own, and once again, probably looking at some of these for the first time in quite some time, but then setting it up for developing a periodic inspection system program for these walls. And, you know, we're anticipating that it'll be about a 2-year effort to get through all of them, at least for the initial time. Next slide. Moving to street sidewalks and trails, and honestly, I don't have everything in here. I had a couple highlights. It was mentioned earlier that our paving budget is a little bit higher this year, so that's wonderful. We will be able to really get a lot of paving done this next year. Concrete, brick, and block itself is down a bit, but we'll still be able to make some improvements in that area. 2 of our major street reconstruction projects we've been talking about for a while are moving into construction next year. That'd be Penn Avenue Phase 2 and Smithfield Street Phase 1. I did put a little caveat here, Smithfield Street being right downtown. When you do a little thinking and coordinating with the NFL draft coming and thinking about how that affects when we start construction and what that project will look like in April of 2026. Earlier I highlighted the sidewalks that we built, over 2 miles of sidewalk this year. We'll continue that program next year. We have $700,000, which is a bit of a decrease from this year, but still a healthy budget. We'll be able to get some projects done. In the world of trails, the Trolley Trail project, we've been working on it for quite some time, and it is actually going to construction this coming year, so we are really excited about that. Allegheny River Green Boulevard is another one that'll be in design next year. How could I forget? I forgot to put the Sylvan Avenue Trail on this project, on this slide. That will be wrapping up design next year as well. And there's so many other things that we have going on. This is just kind of a overview of some of the ones that came to mind. This is my last slide. As I was preparing for this presentation, I was looking and I was looking at the presentation from last year and what we said we were going to be doing, and looking at the presentation from this year, and a lot of the projects are not as far along as I liked or wanted them to be. Our capital projects take a long time to deliver, and that's just the nature of how complex they are and the funding streams. That is always going to be the case, that they take a long time to deliver. But, despite all that, I think that a lot of our processes make them take longer than I think they need to. Agreements and contracting, and some of you know that this is something that's been bugging me for a while, and I've been speaking to whoever will listen to me, so I'll speak about it again. I think that some of our processes don't mesh well with some of the funding sources that we get, particularly all the money that we get through the TIP, which is a vital funding stream for us. And I think that there could be ways to think about ways that we can get that money coming in faster and get it moved through faster, so we can actually get the good improvements that we want. Because really that's the goal. We want to deliver these projects to improve safety and livability. But it's a compounding problem. We have very complex processes. There's a lot of different people involved, a lot of staff time to do it. As I mentioned earlier, I think we've taken on a very high workload, which means that we're kind of jumping from one thing to the next, and then the process is complicated, and then you don't have time to think about it. So then, it can cause delays or errors, which then just comes back and makes processes, compounds your problems. So, my thought is, do our processes add value, and how can we? I'd like to think in 2025 about how can we make sure that we are achieving the functions we need, such as oversight, such as authorization for spending. Is there a simpler way that we can do that to get us where we want to get faster? So that is my. I've been thinking about it some this year. We've had some meetings coming out of the Charles Anderson project. Need to get back into that. We put together a great group of stakeholders to start thinking about ways we might be able to improve some of our processes, but I'd really like to focus on that next year. It's not a capital budget line item, but it affects all of our capital budget projects, so that, maybe we can make pushing that boulder just slightly easier. And with that, I'll pass it along to Mike.
Thanks, Eric. So in 2025, we currently have, I believe, the exact same amount of funding for neighborhood traffic calming from 2024. The goals will be similar, 15 to 25 projects. And everything I'm going to say on the next three slides, I'm doing so also knowing in the back of my head, that we are in a period of austerity. My big goal is to get away from having everyone's going to request speed humps, I know that. But also make sure there's space in that $1 million, I believe it's $1.1 million, to deliver the other projects that maybe the people who live on their street won't be requesting, but have a greater return to the broader community. And so we are going to try and continue to diversify our project portfolio, focusing on neighborhood traffic calming, pedestrian safety, corridor safety. Those are the three types of projects that are going to be delivered under a Vision Zero implementation label. It's not a huge change from what we've done previously. We're still going to take requests for neighborhood traffic calming. Instead of maybe doing 15 speed hump projects here, we'll do 10, but then we'll do 1 to 2 corridors, or maybe we'll do 6 intersection improvement projects, with an emphasis also on the same things that we have been building out to date: equity, justice, and also focusing on the high injury network and targeting these projects to where they are needed the most. From a traffic signal and street light perspective, there's a lot of work. Our capital program, my goal is to deliver the five projects on the screen. And these are primarily in-house projects. Done by in-house staff, our on-call contractors managed by in-house staff. It's just like a slow-moving machine that we chew through projects. We're going to continue to progress and complete design on the Liberty Avenue HSIP project. The Frankstown Avenue and then the Smart Spines projects are going to continue their designs. The LED conversion project will begin. The North Avenue Signals project will begin. We're going to build a traffic management center, 2025. So it's going to be a big year of change for us. And I think the biggest thing when I think about where the next year is going from that side of things is that we are going to procure 4 or 5 different software platforms around traffic management and safety on our streets. We're going to train people how to use them, and then we're going to bring them into the traffic management center. We're also going to develop we have a communication network right now. It covers about 120 traffic signals out of 600. Signals that talk to each other have the ability to become smart. And DOMI needs more in-house IT support. This is no shade on our partners in IMP. They have a lot on their plate. So the one position in the capital budget that is new is a technology manager for DOMI. And that's going to be crucial for us. And that the technology basically, the BRT project, right? Everyone's talking about it. The Uptown Oakland portion is going to be under construction next year. The transit signal priority technology that's going to make it truly a rapid project is going to sit with DOMI. It's going to sit in our network. And we need that person here who understands both the transportation side as well as the tech side to bridge that gap. I'm really excited about that position, and it's going to really get us to where we need to be. Of course, I'm going to talk about needs. Right now in our current staffing, we could take on approximately a 25% increase in calming budget and deliver more projects. It's not a huge number, but people will feel it. So right now we're at 1.1, so yeah, that 1.25 to 1.3 we could handle. Any more additional funding, we would need additional staff, which I included here. I also want to draw attention to that we don't have a good source of funding for local matches for the wide suite of grants we can go after today. We try and go after them. They are missed opportunities if we don't go after these grants. They are anywhere from 100% funded, obviously we go after those, to 30% local match. And we will not be able to advance our program the best we can if we do not aggressively pursue every grant opportunity on the table, knowing full well I appreciate the position that we're in financially. And last but not least, like that picture on the screen right there, those dots are reported crashes from 2023. That covers our whole city. And so I am going to unapologetically always ask for more support for Vision Zero. Because, right, like the only thing that I can control in my role is the engineering side of it. I do feel the stress. You know I feel the stress, and you all feel the stress too in terms of the crisis that is at our front door with people being hit and killed. And so I will take every opportunity I can to ask for more staff, more funding, because the only way those dots on the screen are going to reduce, well, it's not the only way. The only way that I have any influence over for those dots to be reduced is more funding, more engineering, more projects. I think people notice our work. I think people care about our work. I think people felt last year when we increased our projects. And if we have an opportunity to do so, I will always take it because I think it's a strong return of investment.
Continuing the discussion of grants within the realm of the Planning Policy and Permitting Group, in 2024, we brought in close to $16 million in federal and state grants. And as Mike has eloquently shared, all of those dollars are going into necessary safety improvements. Two planning projects will be kicking off grant funded this year are the West Pittsburgh Mobility Plan and our USDOT Safe Streets and Roads for All Planning and Demonstration Grant. We are really excited about this one. It's going to allow us to do a road safety audit, so design work on up to 10 corridors within our high injury network. Within this program, we have also we'll be doing 2 quick build demonstration projects, so actually getting some improvements on the ground with permanent materials to demonstrate the power of these types of quick build mitigations to make our streets safer. I have called out one planning process that was complete this year. That is our Brownsville Road Corridor Safety Plan. So this was a plan that was funded, I believe, in the 2023 capital budget. We worked with a consultant to develop the plan. And then throughout the planning process, we also worked with Councilman Coghill's office to line up local match that would be needed to secure dollars for construction. So this project, the plan is complete and we are moving swiftly into implementation. And implementation should always be the goal of any planning process. Highlighting here that the implementation relies on grants and grants rely on local match. And so our ability to be able to move from plan to construction without dollars dedicated to the local requirement or the local contribution needed to secure those funds, we will not be able to continue this type of process. Now that said, there's other work being done within the city that our planning division is going to continue to support. Allegheny County has a safety action plan, which we're a partner on along with PennDOT and SPC. DCP is working on the comp plan, and DOMI will be sharing and participating in the mobility element as well as some of the policy changes around land use, parking, transportation, demand management that overlap with our work. In the realm of continuing to advance Vision Zero priorities, one of the things that we're very interested in doing is applying what we know about our high injury network and data-driven safety mitigations and incorporating that into our traffic impact studies and development projects so that it's not just the city that's moving the needle on Vision Zero, but it's all private investment that's happening in the public space doing the same. My colleagues mentioned the great in-house work that our staff is able to accomplish, and I've highlighted a little bit of that here. So last year, we got a principal planning position in the budget. That position allowed us to be able to provide better planning and design support to traffic, and we've estimated that the value of that work is $250,000. So that means that if we had to put it out to a consultant to do this work, that's what we would pay. Instead, we've retained a principal planner who's able to do this work and then more. The last couple of slides that we have for you today are around our right-of-way permit fee schedule. So it's a bit of a change in everything else you've heard. But right-of-way management and making sure that our streets are safe throughout construction is an important role of our department. So our 2025 fee schedule reflects changes to certain permits as a result of a fee study that we spent time on over this year. We worked with customers, including utilities, sitting down with them to really understand their business practices. We looked at our current permit volumes and the time that we're spending reviewing these permits and performing the inspections. And what we did is we have revised our fee structure to be more reflective of the staff time needed to review and inspect this work in the right-of-way. When we talk about fees and changes to the fee structure, I think the question is, how does it impact customers? What does it mean for the bottom line? And so in the appendix of this presentation, I do have some samples of how the permit fees are changing. But at a high level, what our projections are showing is that there's a modest increase to the bottom line of increase in fees of $500,000 from the changes. If we were to be more proactive in catching work without permits, there could be even more. So as I said earlier, we've seen a 15% increase in our permits. We suspect that that means that there's at least a 15% increase in unpermitted work. So how can we make sure that that unpermitted work is being identified, brought into compliance, which means more permits are being pulled, proper reviews are being done, as to avoid some of the behavior that you can see in the photos here, where we have very messy work sites, very often blocking sidewalks, which are real safety and accessibility issues. Some of the goals of our fee schedule are to enable the work of our customers. So to that end, I said that we've done a lot of conversations and stakeholder outreach with our customers. The bottom right-hand photo on this slide shows a process map of one of the workflow diagrams that we did with one of those customers in order to understand how they do their work so that we can plan a permit practice that would line up to their business practice. All of this in order to be able to make sure that the city, through its permitting, can minimize disruption and impact to the public. We also sought with these fee changes to introduce fees and permit timeframes that are consistent and transparent. On the next couple of slides, I'll show you what our 2024 fee schedule looks like compared to 2025, and you'll see that we've really taken great steps to simplify our fees, which makes it easier for our customers to be able to plan ahead and also makes it easier for our permit team to be able to administer. The next two slides show the fees that are changing. I should note that not every single permit type is changing. We focused primarily on utility and construction permits. Those are our highest volume. So for this, I've just highlighted two permit types that are changing fees. The first is the barricade. So this is if a customer is closing the sidewalk to perform work or a roadway or a parking lane. Their current fee structure is a $75 application fee plus a $7 for every 200 square foot per day fee. This is a very difficult fee equation for folks to plan for, and when tiny changes happen through the course of construction, somebody needs more time, somebody needs less time, it becomes a very manual process to go back and update these fees. Our proposed fee structure is shown in the right-hand column, and you can see that we've moved towards a flat fee that's based on linear foot of obstruction. So this is going to be much easier for folks to be able to plan for us to administer. And you can see that we've also created a sort of hierarchy. So the more feet, linear feet of obstruction, the greater the permit fee. That's because the more space obstructed, the more review needed to make sure that proper traffic control and construction practices are in place. The second permit that I've highlighted here to present to you today is our moving permit. This is a permit that often goes to new residents. And so I like to highlight it because it's a good example of just what should be a pretty straightforward, simple city service and the type of permit that we want to be able to administer easy and make easy for customers to get. So currently this is a $75 per pod, which is a shipping container for storage placed in a parking lane per week, $25 per truck per 2 days. We've removed that 2-day minimum and have a $50 per truck fee, an $80 pod fee. And with the opening of the public counter at One Stop PGH, I think this is the type of permit that residents will be able to come in and get same day, which I think is really fantastic. Some fees that are going to show as going up are our outdoor retail and dining, specifically the renewal fee. So right now we charge $150 for the annual renewal. When we looked at our actual staff and inspection cost to look at these on an annual basis, we proposed to raise that up to be $330 to be more reflective of the time put into those inspection and reviews. The other notable one is our sidewalk repair. This was $1 per linear foot per 30 days. It resulted in a very, very low cost for a sidewalk repair permit, $30 for a residential permit. We liked this because DOMI wants to enable residents to be able to improve their sidewalks. However, there's still review and inspection that DOMI has to do within that work. So when we did this fee schedule, we did it in a way that we were not talking about subsidizing any sort of permit or activity. And based on our department's true cost of review and inspection, those fees are planned to go up. Now we have worked with council in the past to introduce, concepts of like fee waivers or other things that we can do to help reduce or subsidize these costs. But the costs that you're seeing proposed in the fee schedule are reflective of the city's cost to review and inspect the work. And so we want there to be an acknowledgement of the value of the work, even if we find grants or other streams of funding to reduce the burden that it's actually going to have on the applicant. Finally, one of the new pieces of permit fees that are going to be introduced is a conditional fee. So what this means is that when permit activity is taking place within a certain context, it will require additional review. So if your permit is modifying a signal, there's an additional $600 fee added to that because that requires our traffic division to look at signal timing changes and to review the impact to city infrastructure. We've also built in a primary road closure, $60 per month for when streets are closed, primary streets are closed. So attempting to switch our fee structure from what previously was a very low application fee with a high issuance fee, difficult to calculate, based on size and duration in the public space, to a fee structure that actually assigns fees on the front end as to be tied more directly to staff time to review. And then with these additional conditional fees, when the context of the permit really does demand a higher level of review than would normally be captured in the application fee. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and I think we could take questions.
Great, thank you so much. Why don't we start with Councilwoman Strasburger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for the work that you do every day and for being here today. I have had the privilege of sitting on a few different task forces and commissions, including the Commission on Infrastructure and Asset Management. My office has been really involved in the Vision Zero task force and the enforcement subcommittee there, and then what I think we internally called the Charles Anderson Sprint, right, to look at process improvements around contracting and how we work through those challenges better and more efficiently with our partners like PennDOT. And it's I thought I knew a lot about DOMI and how you all worked, but it's given me such an appreciation for not only the work that you do in the field every day and the design work that you do, but like the things that no one would understand that you are responsible for, like procuring funding to match the many grants and the administration of grants, right, that make up such a big portion of the budget or the funding for the projects that we do every year. And so thank you for all of that work. I will start with a few clarifications I was hoping for, and then jump into some other questions. So based on the presentation, streetlights, we all do care about streetlights very much. I know that this has been we've been working on this project or interested in it for many years now, and in that vein, some streetlights were already upgraded, not that many, but a portion. will those be upgraded? I mean, the ones that are already LED and are part of a newer system, or will they be left alone as a cost-saving measure? I'm thinking of portions of, Highland Avenue near Penn, Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill. Or if that's an answer that you don't quite have yet, happy to return to it. But I just want to make sure we're not messing with what's already been done.
I don't have a great answer for you at this moment. What I will say is that the luminaires that we are going to procure through the conversion project are they throw a different shade of light that is going to be more aesthetically, like, it still accomplishes the goal of filling in dark, like, gaps in your streets. So you go out, you look, you see at night where the gap is, that they will throw light in a certain way in which it covers those gaps. So there would be benefit even in replacing the Cobra heads, the LED Cobra heads we have today, but I don't have an exact answer for you in terms of how many of those would be replaced versus how many would remain in the field.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. And I understand that the ones that were replaced, 10 years ago are of a different, variety that, some people have issues with in terms of the not the brightness, but the
color.
The color of it, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then, can you remind me, and maybe for the public's sake, what does building a traffic management center entail?
Building a traffic management center involves step one is having strong communication to your signal. So no different than a building. A signal can operate as a computer, and if you have strong communication that goes to a central location, you can then work and observe your traffic signal operations remotely instead of from the field. So it involves bringing data into a centralized location, having it come to either a cloud-based or an on-prem server, and then having a video wall and eventually deploying traffic-specific closed-circuit TV. So that way, instead of us responding as we do today, which is boots on the ground, always boots on the ground, we have the ability to have eyes and see traffic conditions, respond to them in much more closer to real time than we do today. So a video wall, and then also a software platform that takes in all the signal data and then puts it in a visual UI that you can work with.
Got it.
Many other cities have them. I visited several of them. It's going to change how we operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it will. That's great to hear. Okay, that's helpful. Bigger questions. And this is a hypothetical. I know those aren't easy to answer, but we have a change in the federal administration coming up. If there were to be changes to the way that cities are funded, where's our biggest threat, I guess? And this is just, I'm asking for the mechanics of it. I know that a lot of the funds that we receive, some are federal, but some are state, but some of those state are contingent upon federal that flow through the state to SPC to, the city. And some are independent from that. So can anyone help me understand where first of all, would our biggest threat be future funding? Are you thinking about, is there even a possibility of existing funding being taken away, or is that just not even a possibility?
Just tap it. Okay, there we go. I think the short answer is people don't know. We don't know. I was on a panel with Rich Fitzgerald and some others yesterday, and we got that question. And even as the head of SPC and former county exec, we don't know. We know relationships are going to change. The reality is a lot of the money that we're talking about today, our projects are multi-year. The current bills that have been authorized still have time on them. So we won't see an immediate change, most likely, day one, because of the process that federal funding had to go to even get down to us. But there could be a change. The money that we've benefited from the last couple years with the IIJ and other bills has been a historic investment in infrastructure in this country. We hope that continues, but the answer is nobody knows. Jeff, I don't know if you have something you want to add.
Let's say for projects that are on the tip, the transportation improvement program, we're good for the next 2 years. That money is already funded and it's allocated for those projects. But after the 2 years, like what Director said, we're not sure.
So much like, because we have multi-year projects, much like a lot of different types of even just like economic downturns or, effects from COVID, there are some industries that don't feel the effects until 2 or 3 years later. We might be in that boat. So it might be 3 years from now that when we fall off the debt cliff, hopefully we have more city funds and can hopefully cover that. But okay, well, best case scenario, let's hope. Let's see. I guess, you brought this up, Eric, when DOMI does encounter unbudgeted needs, how does the exercise to opt to identify or redirect project costs, how does that unfold with the case of, say, the Panther Hollow Bridge, but others I'm sure are good? And I'm happy to have anyone answer that, but
No, sure.
This was in your presentation.
Something we face a lot with bridges, with landslides, things like that. In the case of some of our larger bridges, I mentioned earlier that we did have some preliminary discussions with PennDOT immediately after we had to close the bridge. They're committed to working with us to try to help us. Since we don't have all the answers, we don't know what that looks like, if there will be some funding, external funding that could come to us. If there is funding that can be made available and that we're able to use in, I guess I'll say, a rapid time frame to get repairs done, that would be amazing, and that would be the best case scenario. For that and for other things, we look within our own budget first, of course. Like I said, for example, we have the bridge funding that we have for bridge upgrades. There's certain things I would be hesitant to reprioritize. Like, I don't want to not inspect bridges. I don't want to stop cleaning bridges because it got us in trouble before. I don't want to make that mistake again. But there is some money that we have internally that we can look at reprioritizing that. We can look at other line items within DOMI's budget. Are there projects that are slower for some reason that we can, maybe delay or swap out? Within the bridge upgrades program, for example, or within the slope program, we have the ability to change deliverables. We work with OMB to make those changes. If we're getting into a situation where we want to take money from a different project to fill a budget gap, then that would be something that you all would see because we would be changing the capital budget. We can, of course, work with OMB as well to go even further afield and try to identify if there's other funding sources in the city that could be repurposed. But there's not a simple answer, and depending what we're looking for, it can be easy or challenging on any particular project.
No, that's helpful to get the examples.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there someone who is tasked with or participates in sort of either consortiums or opportunities for learning to devise ways to bring down materials costs, whatever that might look like, whether it is shared purchasing or whether it is just learning from what other cities are able to accomplish?
That's a really interesting question. There are people in city government in the procurement office that are
in procurement,
are responsible for things like sustainable procurement,
Yeah.
to see where there are ways to have better environmental outcomes from the things that we buy and use. We are beholden to our procurement process, for a lot of the things, for everything that we buy, and the market. But I think informally, many of us are engaged in those conversations with, like, NACDO, for example. The city's a member of the National Association of City Transportation Officials. Other organizations like that look at a wide variety of opportunities we participate in. So I would say informally, yes. Within procurement, yes.
Just know the cost of everything has increased. It's beyond our control, but if there are ways that we can temper that, of course, the cost of us, the materials for a signal replacement, even that is just so astronomical compared to where it was 5 years ago. Want to make sure we're looking at that. So that's great to hear. Okay, I have one more question, and that is, we're so thrilled to have worked in partnership with your team, with other parts of the city, with Councilperson Warwick on the on getting the red light camera, the RLE program, over the finish line and then now into implementation phase. And I want to acknowledge that that wouldn't have happened without the leadership of Councilperson Warwick and working with you on the Vision Zero goals and the group that has come out of that. And I just, as an aside, I have to say that the multidisciplinary nature of that group that meets is, I find, incredibly helpful. And the only way that projects like these get the attention they need from all the different entities, and continue to stay top of the list. Otherwise, we all get sucked into our own day jobs, or, the other priorities in our jobs, and things don't move as quickly as they could. So it's great. $2.1 million, and I do apologize that I'm asking this now for the first time in this forum, but is someone able to break down what that will pay for? I know it's a position, and then I know that originally there was a handful of priority data informed, data based based on high injury crash locations and intersections, but that could further expand, is my assumption, with additional funding. But wanted to see, not an exact breakdown of numbers, but would it just mean that we have more initial intersections to work with?
Yeah, I'm going to start a little bit with the process. So we first need to get the RFP out and see what's available. There's there's different funding models that vendors can present. So we are intending on beginning with a minimum of 3 locations and potentially expanding beyond that with the additional funds in the budget. We also have been working with PennDOT to talk about what locations we will be deploying automated red light cameras at. And so we're beginning that discussion because that's another important part of the process. Absolutely. Is making sure that PennDOT will approve the locations.
Okay. Thank you. Well, more to come there. I appreciate that. That exhausts my questions. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Sure. Thank you. Councilman Wilson?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the department that always seems to amaze me on how much work you're able to do. I think the public sees it too. You're one of the departments that, people walk outside their door and they immediately see how you all are. Sorry, I recently woke up with this. So, on basically everything, from the street to the sidewalk to how people, use their street. So really appreciative of all the work you're able to accomplish. So I don't really have many questions. I just had a couple that I'm just not as aware. So when we talk about poll fees, where was that? There's a lot of fees that are in here about polls, and a lot of them have changed. I just want to ask, who's doing work on our polls that we require them to pay a fee?
So the biggest applicant for our poll permits is Duquesne Light. And so they do receive permits from us for their activities for installing new poles, replacing poles, not necessarily for modifying their facilities on them. So we're permitting the sort of footprint and activity in the public space.
Oh, so like a telephone pole. I keep on
Wooden.
always talk about traffic signals.
Yeah,
I'm like, wait a second, who is
yeah.
going on? And we're charging them for stuff that we want done.
Yeah, so these are typically
Telephone poles.
wooden,
Gotcha.
poles. And then the other applicants for pole permits are telecommunication companies. They're very often attached to city poles, and so
Okay.
depending on what their work is, there's a different fee in there. If they're replacing, there's a fee in there if they're installing new.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many sort of sub breakdowns of permit fees within one permit type.
That answers it for me. That question about that pole fee. Yeah, telecommunications pole fee Makes sense. So telecommunications is Verizon.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And then the fees that you have up here where they were all very less than, greater than, equal to, you know, where are those at, Peter, in these sheets? Or that they just, I was talking about fees, and there were some fees that they put on their slides that I was just wondering how that fits into the fees that you attached at the end. I was talking about that one, but now I'm talking about the.
I could provide a little bit of insight into this.
Yeah, I was
So-
just curious why it doesn't show. Like, has it
Yeah.
been changed further?
No, it's the same fee.
You see what I'm
Department of
saying?
Finance has a template, which is how the fee schedule is presented to council. However, it's not the most digestible way to look at our fee schedule, which is why what we presented which is why we presented our version of the fee in a way that I think is conveying the same fee within that table, just in a more clarified way.
You see what I'm saying, Peter?
So the way that, sorry, I don't have a microphone, but like, there's the one column is the 2024 fees, and then the 2025 fees.
Yeah.
I have a column in there that shows the changes.
Okay. All right. I figured it was just a formatting thing.
It is a formatting thing. So
Yeah.
what you're seeing is the fee schedule that is in the Department of Finance template, so that it matches what every other department that charges fees presents it as. What we show is more what we post on the website, so that it's more user-friendly for people to understand.
How many positions did you were you trying to initially get in to the budget? Well, you know, since typically we all don't look at constraints, you know, that we're under with the budget, we all ask for a lot. And so I was just curious, like, what was your number that you asked for?
I think that's a really good question that I actually don't have off the top of my head.
I think we asked for around 30 positions this year.
What I can say is the majority of those were tied to the fee schedule. And one of the things that's maybe not immediately clear is I think we're on track to bring in almost $5 million in fee revenue this year, but less than $2 million goes towards staffing in our right-of-way shop. So there's a mismatch between the number of people that we have and the number of people that we would ideally want for the amount of work that we have. I think just for comparison's sake, we have something like 9 inspectors, right-of-way inspectors. DPW, I think, is getting 12 litter inspectors. PLI, we issue more permits than PLI. They have something like 53 inspectors. And so those 9 people are responsible for the tens of thousands of poles that we have. They're responsible for all of the unpermitted work, like the pictures we showed of sidewalks that are blocked. Basically, every time you go outside and you say, man, what's up with this detour? Man, why can't I walk down this sidewalk? Man, what's going on? The people who should be out there seeing that or preventing it to begin with is our right-of-way team. But with 9 people to cover the entire city, we just can't be all the places that those issues are arising.
Yeah. Yeah, you should have seen it. They, Peter say, replaced all the main line, and like my street was on hold for 5 years to get paved, or maybe 6 years because they were going to do main line replacement. Great, love it. But all the contractor that was involved, you know, it was very interesting. The route home, it was quite something else. Because, you know, Pittsburgh has a lot of different paths, let's say, to get home. That definitely is not being coordinated.
I will say,
You know, no fault. I'm not trying to pick on Domi for this, but speaking to like the amount of employees that you could use. So could you give me a breakdown of, so inspectors, would you say that's the bulk of the 30?
I can provide some light onto that. So of that 30 total department positions, I believe 16 of them were permitting and inspections. So what we had in there were a small number of technical reviewers. To your point about traffic signs and detours and major obstructions from utility work. It is our belief that more technical review on the front end would help shorten some of those disruptions. And so we've asked for technical staff who can review plans, do and assist in coordination with major obstructions. We've also asked for those inspectors, the boots on the ground, to make sure that work sites and construction are kept to the standard that they should be. We asked for code enforcement inspectors, so more entry-level positions that would be focused primarily on just identifying violations or unpermitted work in the right-of-way to bring those sites into compliance. And then finally, we did request more permitting staff to help in the administration and the processing of the permits that are coming in, which again have increased in volume year over year.
So what happens when we don't fill those positions that you as the department see you need?
I would say that this year, the result of the fee study was not just new fees. It also identified a number of process changes and changes to the structure of our fees, which I think are going to have immediate benefits for staff and customers that aren't necessarily relying on new staff positions. So if we have a more simplified fee schedule, we reduce the number of times that we're manually going in and changing dates, extending permits, amending permits, we'll be able to redirect some of that inefficient staff time to more efficient uses. So that is going to be the way that we will be able to add some value to the process through process changes.
And to answer the question of what happens when you don't have enough people to do that work, it's what you see today. It's where you see unpermitted work that is damaging our right-of-way, that might be contributing to future costs that the city will bear. It's when...
Can you give an example?
An example...
I have an example.
Oh.
It's not to cut you off, Director.
Oh.
But I was going to jump in. Real quickly, I asked for 4 positions, 2 of which would support Vision Zero design, and then 2 laborers to support. I mentioned how we are finding every product, every material we can that's quick build to try and respond to the need. And the example I can pretty plainly give is that flex posts. We were built to manage signs and pavement markings. That's what they do. There are 10 people who do that physical work. Whole city. If we go ahead and add X number of flex posts a year, 50, 100, 200, when they get knocked down, the same people are doing it. The inventory that they have to maintain is growing. The staff numbers are not. And multiple times this year, I had the mayor's office asking me for repeated updates on where this flex post replacement was, where it wasn't. I had to be pretty plain with them in that our priority is signs and pavement markings. We don't have people. If this year we had so few rainy days, I had to be blunt and say we're not going to get to it for another month and a half. And that meant something to a constituent, like the flex posts. Yeah.
Do you have examples of? I was just kind of asking to go a little deeper on the one comment you made, which was damage our right of way. Do you have examples of where our right of way was damaged because we're in? That's the.
Yeah, I mean, when we don't have our streets restored properly, when we're not able to go out even after work that has been permitted, when we're not able to go out and inspect everything in a timely fashion, then our asphalt will degrade. Every time our street is cut open, it compromises that street that we are ultimately responsible for resurfacing. And if we can't get to them and see that it was cut open or see that it wasn't restored properly in a timely fashion, we lose our opportunity to then follow up with that bad actor. There are other examples, and this is a blend of different departments. You remember Transvaal Way, probably, where unpermitted work on private property led to a landslide and ultimately a road closure and collapse. And so not only is it when there's work done in the right of way, but we see huge impacts of work that's done on private property, that then we have to go out and be present as part of the right of way to make sure that that's restored properly.
With parking, let me get my terms here correctly. With neighborhoods interested in adding RPP districts, who's in charge of that right now?
Our residential permit parking program is one of the responsibilities of our curbside management team.
Okay. All right.
So if you're interested in establishing an RPP zone in your district, you can reach out to me and I'll walk you through the parameters of code and the process to begin.
Okay. And then remind me, is the parking, paid parking at the curbside, that's also part of this management to DOMI now?
Our group, the way the relationship between DOMI and the parking authority works is DOMI establishes the curb regulation. So is it paid parking? Is it free parking? Is it no parking? Is it residential permit parking? The parking authority is the enforcer. And in the case of metered parking and RPP zones, they're the ones that are responsible for collecting the revenue and issuing the permits to do so. So it's sort of a collaborative
That answers my
effort.
question. Thank you. And then what type of outreach have you done for all these different fees? Last year, I remember there was, some challenges there that were seen, and so you all were able to speak to the outreach that you've done. So was that done here as well?
Yes, and I would say we could give you an entire hour-long presentation about the work that has been done this year. It has been a substantial portion of our senior right-of-way manager, Katie Weddick's work this year has been to look at our historical permit data, and track, what we're currently bringing in, the volume and permit types that are coming in. We did some best practice research to see what other cities are doing, the types of permits and fee structures that they have. And then most importantly, the bulk of the work was in understanding how much time, staff time should be going into doing technical review of our permits. And then the calculation for how to assign that cost of service to a fee. I think the benefit of this year's fee changes, most of these existing fees are decades old, so this is really long overdue. The structure and type of fees don't necessarily match the way people are doing work, and they certainly don't match DOMI's expectation around quality of work, especially around work zones and more technical review and record keeping. So that's a major improvement.
Okay, great. That's
I wanted to speak to the the dialogues that we've been having with our utilities. So our utility customers are our largest customers. We met with them as a whole at the beginning of this process to talk about, the endeavor of the fee work, what we would be looking at, getting some initial feedback. And then we also met with them individually to process map the way that they do work, ask questions about what their needs are, where, maybe we can be providing a different or better level of service to them in order to enable the work. I think that's sort of the crux of these fee changes is that DOMI has a responsibility to manage the right-of-way, to make sure that construction is done to standard and that work zones are safe. And the way that we're able to do that is by really understanding the business needs of our utilities and making sure that we can sort of meet them where we need to and then be able to provide the review that allows us to manage the public space in a safe and accessible way.
Councilman
Great.
Wilson, I also have an answer to your earlier question about how many positions we requested and how many of those were inspectors. If you want that, and I can give you the whole list as well. But we asked for 20. We asked for 26 positions, 8 were inspectors, and 9 were permit and review, right-of-way review folks. So,
okay. I appreciate that, and just want to try and list as many thank yous as I can before I get off the mic. all the new sidewalks that you all continue to do and support, especially in my district, because really a lot of these streets are undeveloped, and as different communities have flourished throughout the years or moved or development is happening, or has been there for a long time, like we're able to connect a lot of people to parks and also schools. Hopefully that school doesn't close down. But the reality is of just like updating and improving the streets has been incredible for places in the north side, and looking forward to what we have in the Strip District for the current grant that was received for Smallman, and just the continued work that you all do for traffic calming, and even just thinking through things like locating different street lights that are irrelevant, like at the top of Antrim on California. So turn that into a raised crosswalk with a 4-way stop. I appreciate everything you all do, and looking forward to continued partnership next year. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Councilman Charlin?
Thank you. I know that this is kind of a long briefing. That said, your department oversees so many things. I was kind of commenting to Councilperson Strasburger that kind of each one of you could have your own budget briefing that we could talk through here. I know that, I could talk to Mike for hours, on the traffic calming projects that he works on and what budgets he needs. And I thank all of you, because there's a lot of things we reach out to you about. And I kind of want to start there. So I know that Domi, when I started with the city, Domi was really in the process of kind of figuring out what responsibilities they were taking from DPW and how those were going to be balanced. And that really seemed to continue in my first couple years, a lot of things coming your way and figuring out what the balance is. Do you feel like at this point from your organization that there is a level of equilibrium of like, these are the things that are our things now, and we don't think that we're going to take more on from Public Works, or we're not going to give more away to Public Works? Are we kind of, not stable as a department, but stable as the department's responsibilities?
I would say that there are core responsibilities that we know Public Works will not be touching, but there are a lot of tasks that if we realize that it would be more efficient for that group to do, then we work with them on it. We resurface streets, but they still fill potholes. We build sidewalks with contractors, but they have crews. We do major steps constructions, but they can sometimes do repairs in the middle. And so there's a lot of gray area. You heard Mike mention the transfer of responsibility for flex post maintenance this year. So there are things that have come into the department, but without staffing to be able to do those. And I envision that we're still going to be in that kind of negotiation phase for a while.
Yeah, and the gray area is sometimes what stresses me out and really irritates the public, right? The one thing that I've talked to you about, and I've talked to Public Works about, and I cannot get anyone to say this is our job, is the railings that we have on retaining walls. A prime example is like in the slopes on Shelley and Stella Street. They're green retaining wall or green fences. They were a WPA project. They exist all throughout the city. I know there are a lot in Councilman Wilson's district, but someone needs to take responsibility and ownership of sandblasting those and repainting those, or else we are going to lose them and we are going to repair them with something that looks crappy. So I want to ask publicly, is this your responsibility or is this Public Works' responsibility?
I'm happy to jump in on that. One of the things I think that has been a challenge, and this is a symptom of that, but as you alluded to, figuring out where our responsibilities lie. We're DOMI, we're responsible for the right of way. We say that but it's not fully true, right? Public Works does, like, we have the engineering department, we have planning, policy, permitting. As far as, I mean, I like to say people who actually do work, like the workers within traffic, those folks did come to DOMI. So we do signal maintenance, we do signing and pavement markings. This year now we do flex posts. But as far as maintenance of the right-of-way, accepting that, we don't do it. We are setting up a new bridge maintenance division to specifically look at maintenance of bridges. Because they're such a big asset, you know, it seemed to make sense for that to lie in our department. But the only way we get work done is to hire contractors. You know, we have engineers and we hire contractors. So routine maintenance of things in the right-of-way is the streets maintenance and construction division within Public Works. There's a challenge. We have all these railings. I also fear that we're going to rip them down and put up chain link fence. That's a bad outcome for everybody. You know, predates me, but I know back in the day we had a construction division in every maintenance division throughout the city in Public Works, and there were people to do that work. Now there's one construction division in Public Works that serves the entire city. So, you know, it's a big issue. The only way we're going to get those railings cleaned and painted and fixed is to do it in-house. The cost to contract that out is prohibitive. So, you know, from our vantage point, you know, for certain big projects, yes, they absolutely should lie with us. But for that routine maintenance of streets, that still at this point lies with Public Works. I just think they have severe capacity issues like we all do.
Okay, so it has to be a Public Works job. So that I will bring it up with Director Hornstein in their discussion, and we will get to the bottom of this. Mr. Barry on Stella Street is roughly 80 years old, and he is taking it on himself to sand these and paint them himself. He cannot do all of the slopes, and if we don't help him out, you know, we need to help him out. Yeah. Mr. So anyway, there's a lot of important things. That is something that, like, I have been focused on for years to try to get somebody to take ownership of whose job it is to do this. You know, in that vein, I do want to ask though, what are the things that DOMI has taken on, or are there things that DOMI has taken on that you think maybe should be sent back to Public Works? That in that equilibrium or the redefining of the responsibilities, that this should not be your responsibility anymore? Are there things that you've identified that should go under Director Hornstein's purview?
I think it's sort of hard to answer that, you know, for a lot of reasons. I will say that there are times that there are things that some of our staff that have been with the city for decades say, why are we doing this? DPW used to do this, which granted most of our work DPW used to do. I would say if something, like Eric is saying, if something is cost prohibitive when we have to hire out a contractor to do it, which we have to do for almost anything that would be sent to Eric's group, so project design and delivery, any major capital projects. If it's not a major capital project, if it's a guide rail reinstall, where, you know, somebody with a truck and a little bit of staff could do it, those are the types of things that I think we have contracted out, but it might not make sense financially to do that forever. I think ideally we'd have way more staff to do some of this work directly, be faster, be cheaper, but we know that dollars come with different requirements attached to them. So I would say, and I'm sure the team has some ideas too, but some of those more maintenance-y, if it's not, in my mind, when you were asking about the green fence, I thought, well, if we're fixing the retaining wall, the green fence becomes a part of it. When we built some new sidewalks in Councilmember Wilson's district, we had fencing that we installed as part of that capital project because it's a part of a larger project.
The Lawn Street Promenade, you did that for that as well.
Exactly. If it's painting something that's already there, that's an operation. That's a maintenance. If it's fixing the fence as part of a bigger project, then that's a DOMI. So that's the threshold in my mind.
Yeah, I think I've got some ideas of things that, you know, could be shifted over, but maybe those aren't discussions to have in public here. One thing that, you know, shifting on that I had been worried about in the traffic calming project or traffic calming projects has been something that I'm now seeing. So on Bailey Avenue, which was something I had to kick and scream and throw a temper tantrum to get built, and it is built. We have now run into a problem where I believe the utilities needed to dig up that road there where a speed bump was. So now we have a speed bump on this side of the road, but if you're coming this way, the road is flat. How are we going to restore that?
In that specific instance, the speed hump should be the responsibility of the utility as a part of their restoration.
Are we going to follow up with whatever utility needed to be there?
Yes, and we should be, as a part of our normal inspection process, our inspectors meet out with utilities and discuss restoration requirements.
And I mean, we pay a lot for our speed bumps. And will the utilities have to pay a huge additional amount for all the engineering that's required there? Or can they essentially dump asphalt onto that, mound it in a way that Mike says is acceptable? Is that how that's going to work?
Kind.
Okay.
Meeting our construction standards, but there's no engineering at that point. And so we have records that indicate this is where the speed hump, speed table, speed slot is to go. We have the construction drawings for what it looked like in its original condition, with the pavement markings on top of it should look like. Provide to them, they replace in kind.
Okay. I worry, that was a thing that I was worried about as we're year 4 into 5 into the speed hump program, that we are going to at some point have to restore streets that had speed humps on them, and that is going to become like very expensive very quickly.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll also put in a plug. In terms of being frustrated with timelines for restoring infrastructure, that literally dovetail perfectly with the right-of-way conversation we had about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one thing that we didn't talk about today, but we've talked with council about in the past, is the better coordination between utilities, the city's paving program, and then our own DOMI Vision Zero implementation program. And I think every year we have gotten a little bit better. The goal for 2025 is that we're going to be at a 3-year sort of planned list instead of a 1-year list. That takes a lot of external coordination with the utilities and other partners as well. But to get ahead of the issues that you're identifying, it takes being able to project out multiple entities' work. And hopefully in that process, we also find efficiencies. So ways we can, maybe hold off on a Vision Zero implementation project until planned utility work is complete. That way the road is only disrupted one time. That's the end state we want to work toward.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me talk about, the need to only tear the road up once, and how the coordination that needs to happen, and hearing from other folks about the ebb and flow of us getting better and worse at doing that, and my dream that we will be able to only tear this up and except for in case of real emergencies, only tear a road up one time and get everything that needs to be done there, and that might mean we lose the road for the summer, but
I would emphasize with that the need for more technical reviews in the permitting process, so that we're actually catching potential conflicts before projects are actually into construction. So a lot of what our inspection supervisor and utility coordinator, Brian Ralston's work is grappling with that sort of coordination on the back end. We'd love to get Brian into a position where there was more known about this work at the beginning of the process, so it's less running down issues and more time spent on the front end in coordination.
Cool. Well, please let us know how we can help with that. I know that the answer there is more staff. I do want to, speaking of staff, a question that I want to bring up to every department. What percentage of your staff is working from home? And what are the policies in your department around working from home?
Sure. So about half of our department cannot work from home. They're in the field. You can't really, put up a new sign from your couch. Maybe one day with autonomous sign installation devices. We have a department policy for those who could do their work from home of a 3-day minimum in office per week. And they do that. If you walk down the Domi halls, you will see folks in there at least 3 days per week. And that is about to probably increase when we go to in-person permit counter operations. I know that's something that members have been really passionate about. And my understanding is that November 18th is when we are cutting the ribbon on those in-person, those in-person operations. And so Domi faces are here every day.
Yeah, I think it is, it's very important, and this is not just your department, but this is every department, that as we are really thinking about downtown and what downtown means, that we're a leader in showing up to work here. At some level, I like the way that Director Gula said yesterday that working from home is a privilege for her department, and I think that's kind of the right mentality there.
And we do have that mentality, Councilman. The one thing I will reinforce is that pre-COVID, there were many benefits to Domi working for the city that private sector did not match. Mm-hmm. COVID changed that, and so the 3-2 is working really well for us. And I am confident that if that were to drastically change in the direction of more time downtown, city staff, I'm not sure how Philadelphia is doing right now with respect to their mandatory 5 days, but we would no longer compete with the private sector for maintaining staffing levels and attracting talent. So that's something I just want to make sure it's out there.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay. Another thing I want to mention, you guys talked a lot about grants, and I think that's something that I'm really passionate about in terms, especially in the budget season that we're in, as we're looking at the future of the city. I think one of the most illustrative things in my time as a staffer was the conversation that you and I had about a Green Light Go grant, where we had a project funded. It was taken out of the budget, and I said to Mike, what can we do here? And he says, well, just give me 20% of the cost of that project, and we'll go for a Green Light Go grant, and it'll be funded. And which makes me think that it's like shopping full price at Kohl's, and where what are we doing here? What are the projects that we are paying for full price at Kohl's that we could pay 70% off, that we're not, because of some convoluted grant processes that we have. What can we do to improve our ability to get everything at a discount with grants here? And I'm looking at you because that was your experience, but it's probably not a Mike question as much as it is as everyone question.
Most of my team's work, most of it could be grant funded, and most of it is grant funded. I think the biggest I don't know how much money Green Light Go would give us. I don't know how much money. I don't think we've probably reached the cap. There's probably more projects, more traffic signal replacement projects we could do through Green Light Go. My guess is close to $3 million a year of them providing us, and then us coming up with the $600,000 on the side. Every single traffic signal replacement in the city should be funded by a grant. We're at the point now where they are. But are we doing enough? Probably not. In terms of Vision Zero, I think it's good. We do have, most grant programs are state administered, and so it comes with the benefits and the cons of that.
Sure.
And so doing a lot of the Vision Zero work might be tough. We want to find a grant program that would not make us go through as much of a state oversight process. And we're just fortunate that the Green Light Go program does not make us do that.
Yeah, I'll speak on Eric's behalf. Like, he got a critical sidewalk gap from multimodal that got through the state process, and it delayed the project by a year or so. But
Probably more than that, yeah.
But we get a bunch of grants through. The biggest hurdle we have is finding local match, because most of our money's assigned to specific projects. So we need that match identified to go after the grant.
Good.
Just want to point out, this is my take, but the tip where all of our bridges and streets get funded it's not a grant per se, but it's similar, right? There's external money coming in and we have to match it. When we have projects, we go and we get funding on the tip, and then just to be blunt about it, we go after those projects, we get the funding, and we always manage to find a match. I've not seen a situation where we presented something to SPC, they've given us funding, and then the city said, well, we can't do it, cancel that project. When we go after grants, it seems to be a different calculus, where we have to identify a match up front, and not even a theoretical, but we have to have actual money sitting somewhere that we can point to go after a grant, which we may or may not get, and that money's being tied up. So, it seems within reason, within parameters, there has to be a willingness and a desire to go after money when the money is available, and trust that we will find a way to put our share in so that we can be successful with that project.
Not to belabor the point, one more note is on staffing. So something we don't often talk about is the fact that some of Eric's staff, and soon Angie's staff and other parts of the department and city, we get reimbursed from these grants. So you actually can pay for people with these grants. The problem is it could take 16 to 18 months between knowing that we're getting awarded a grant and actually having the grant agreement signed and where we can start officially charging to it. If we were able to have staffing added to the department predicated on the fact that we know this money's coming online and knowing that we have hundreds of millions of dollars in capital projects now, so effectively charging people to capital projects and growing based on that, we would have more people to be able to get through processes faster, to be able to apply for grants and manage them. One limiting factor is the match, as we've heard. Another is we don't have enough people to manage all the potential projects that we could get in with grants. And so we are also mindful of not overextending ourselves to the point where it'd be a detriment to the city.
And the only thing that I will add is that our Vision Zero budget working group is structured to hopefully break down some of these internal procedures that we have specifically around finding that local match, so that we can, DOMI can do the work to do the work, basically.
I think one of my dreams for your department is that you have some form of your own grants department within your department. Grants office, I guess. But, a grants team on your department. And then we are able to provide you some sort of, local match trust fund that you can use to say, hey, this money could go to this or it could go to this, however it has to work. And if we don't win the grant, the money stays there. And if we lose it, or we do win the grant and the money goes away, then we find a way to replace that with whatever the pipeline for that might be. I think that will save the taxpayers an unbelievable amount of money, because have we ever returned a grant? Is that something that's happened from your department? Pete's over there saying yes. Everyone over here is nodding no.
It was a long time ago before DOMI existed.
Okay.
I was going to be in my 7 years with DOMI. I do not recall us ever returning a grant. There's one grant that may expire, but that's because the scope of it has changed from when it went after, and that is the rail bank in the Strip district that we were trying to buy a right-of-way for one of the railroads down there, and they came back at 20 times what the grant was for.
Oh, wow.
So that one, I think, is expiring at the end of the year.
So, the things that I look at are that, there could be a situation where we return grants, which you're saying is not happening. The thing that I worry about is the money we're leaving on the table, the money we're not applying for because we know we can't have the local match. And something that Director Pollock says that I do very much agree with is the idea that we change our process when we're actually looking at capital projects to budget in the staff time in the projects so that we are not funding something but not having the staff to manage it or to PM it. I think that was a huge missed opportunity in ARPA that if we would have budgeted the PMs that were needed, not so much in your department, but more in DPW facilities projects, that we could have got a lot more done with that ARPA funding if we would have looked at the staff time on the front end and looking at the actual cost of that when we really talk about an application there. So I want to see that pushed as best I can. One other, I guess the next point that I want to, so your department has a huge role in the development in the city, not city projects, but private developers doing work. And we hear consistently about how challenging it is to build within the city. And I worry, I'm pretty sure that the only cranes that are operating right now in the city are at CMU and UPMC. And I could be wrong about that, but that was true a couple months ago. What do you see as things that you can do to help development and help us move into a city of the future here?
I'll take that. So DOMI does have a small but mighty development review team of 2. And what those folks do is they review all site plans that have changes to the right-of-way to make sure that those changes are actually going to be improvements. When developers are building their building, which is their property, they're very often impacting the public space. And so DOMI needs to ensure that those changes are consistent with our standards and that they're resulting in actual improvements. So we do have some folks that do that. I think when you were speaking a little bit earlier to the division of responsibilities between DPW and DOMI on the maintenance side, I think that we need to approach division of responsibilities with our development review agencies with the same sort of thinking. So we have PLI, DOMI, zoning, Planning Commission, all of these groups that are reviewing different pieces of land development projects. And sometimes we're looking at different aspects of the same thing. And so I do think that some better coordination and maybe understanding of roles and responsibilities could go a long way in all of our respective agencies being able to leverage our jurisdictional power to get better outcomes. I know for the transportation review, something that I would like to see is faster reviews, but also more quality reviews. I feel as though DOMI lacks some of the guidelines and standards, perhaps things that need to be written in code to really enforce or force developers to take the types of, build the types of public improvements that we would like to see them build into their streetscape improvements. And so I would like to be able to get more meaningful investment in the public right-of-way out of developers. I think there's a way to do this through collaboration. Something that I've mentioned to certain development or certain applicants is that they spend a lot of time preparing site plans, preparing material for commissions, drafting a transportation impact study that at the end of the day may not be promoting or proposing any actual changes to the right-of-way. So I think DOMI being able to have identified through some of our planning processes the types of improvements and priorities that we want on our city streets. And then as we have developers coming in along those corridors, to have them actually share in implementing those opportunities. So instead of spending $150,000 on your transportation impact study to have a traffic engineer, tell the city how many cars you're going to be bringing to your development, DOMI's already done a safety corridor plan. Your transportation improvement is building or implementing what's been identified within the plan. Again, I think that requires coordination. That requires, I think, potentially some changes to code and policies and procedures in place so that we can have agreements with applicants so that they can invest in the public space in this way.
Then I also wanted to ask, we talked about, and I appreciate the conversations about the right-of-way permits and the street opening fees, but also the sidewalk repair fees. That is going up. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, that is correct. And I specifically highlighted that in the table because I wanted to acknowledge that when we took the approach in the fee study to really understand what staff review and inspection looks like, that brought to light the fact that some of our current permit fees are not high enough to be capturing or reflecting the cost of service. And so sidewalk repair, I think, is the most striking version of that because that was a $30 permit, which now we're showing a higher permitting fee for. What I will say is that there are opportunities, I think, for DOMI to talk about setting procedures around fee waivers or potentially grant programs to help offset that cost because we want to enable sidewalk repair in our city, but we also want people to recognize that sidewalk construction does have a cost to review and a cost to inspect. And so the fee schedule shows the cost of the work. That doesn't mean that we couldn't find a way to subsidize it or to supplement it to make it less of a barrier for people to replace sidewalks.
That's one that I think I'm going to have some problems with. I did this listening tour when I came into office in all my neighborhoods. We talked a lot about sidewalks. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is, it is very expensive for a homeowner to repair their sidewalk. And although the grant program or some form of that usually is going to be subsidized for low income or moderate income folks, but even for high income folks, it's still very expensive for them to repair their sidewalks. And if we're charging more for them, we're creating another incentive of why you should move to Mount Lebanon. And I think that's one of the things where if we have to eat some cost somewhere, I think the sidewalk permit might be a thing where we eat some cost. So I think that I would like to have more of a discussion on that and what we can do there. I also really like the idea of, I think we've mentioned this in some of our discussions we had over the year. One of these town halls, there was a woman who suggested that her neighborhood in, I think it was Columbus or I forget exactly where, all worked together and basically they redid all of their sidewalks together with a city contractor, and that was just tacked on to their property bill or property taxes. And, there was a bulk cost associated with that, but it made it a lot cheaper for everyone. And they didn't have to project manage their own project, which is, again, a thing that we make very challenging for our neighbors when they have to figure out, okay, I've got to talk to a sidewalk person. Only, there's a good portion of people that will not do work within the city because they don't want to deal with city permits. So I've got to find a city-approved contractor, then I've got to get all my permits, and God forbid if there's a tree involved in that, all these things that make this person who now has to become a PM for their own house, and that sucks. I don't want to see that, and I don't want it to be expensive, and I don't want it to be hard. So I do want to discuss that further. I think that's really all that I have. But I do want to thank all of you for being here, and there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but I'm sure the councilwoman has some questions too.
Yes, Councilwoman Smith, do you have questions? Is she still online?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I actually do have just a few. Mostly everyone asked all the questions I would think of asking. I wanted to ask about the inspectors and how many inspectors you had and what all the responsibilities were. And I'm looking at some of the other places that have a lot of inspectors, and you only had a few in comparison. We ask a lot of you, especially with the utilities and how that's managed. And I think that I would like to see you get at least one or two more inspectors, and maybe if we can move them around. So I'll have that conversation with my colleagues. But I really want to talk a little bit about Middletown Road and Steuben Street. There's been a lot of traffic calming along that area, and I want to thank you for the work on Chartiers. People are really excited about that. So, and I do want to thank Domi for all the work you've been doing in my district, including on Mount Washington, all around Grandview Avenue with the slope remediation projects. I thank Congressman Doyle, former Congressman Doyle, for getting the funding, and I thank current Congressperson Summer Lee and her staff for the help that they've been giving us up there as well. But currently. But I really want to thank you for all the work that's going on there. You look at the work on the hillside; it's tremendous. The other thing I want to talk about is I heard you mention McArdle, and I put McArdle in the budget almost every time I can since I've been in office. And there's been work along McArdle along the way on different parts of it. What is the plan for this year coming up for McArdle? I heard you mention a little bit, but I want to hear more details about it.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I can take that. So I mentioned earlier that we are starting design on two bridge preservation projects. That would be McArdle over the hillside, right at the top where the bend in the road is, and then down lower where it goes over Sycamore Street. So those are longer term capital projects. We're just starting design. That'll be several years until we get to construction on those. The other project that we've been working on, which I think you are alluding to with the funding, is repair of the elevated sidewalk section, which is near the top of McArdle roadway, just below that upper bridge. That project is in design. It slowed down for a bit as we were trying to coordinate with the upcoming bridge project there, but we're getting that moving again. I believe we will be finishing final design over the winter and putting that out to bid. So that's going to address the section of sidewalk near the top that's elevated. It has a railing on the outside, but it's actually supported above ground, and the structure supporting it is deteriorating. So that project will be going to construction next year, so we're excited about that. Of course, this is one of those locations similar to what Councilman Charlin mentioned, where there are railings all the way up and down McArdle that are in dire need of attention, many of those sections. And unfortunately, where we stand today, some of the remainder of that is not programmed for any capital project at this time.
So I would say that I think that project, that there's been money in that project for that roadway multiple times over the years. And under Pat Hassett, things were moving along. They started to do some projects, and then he left. And also back when Tom, I can't remember his name, but he worked for DPW when he was here, Tom Joyce. And so I think when those two were here, we had a lot going on, and they were really keenly aware of that area and putting a lot of effort into it. And then it suddenly stopped. So I have a lot of concern about why we're not making that such a priority, because it is a very highly traveled road. It leads up to Grandview Avenue, which has the most tourists in the entire city. So I'm wondering what more needs to happen to make people realize that this should be a priority, because we've done our part every year, putting funding in almost every year, I should say, and waiting for the projects to be done. So that will be something I talk about in the budget and see about what we can do to make some amendments and some changes, and also with the inspectors. But I also want to ask about Middletown Road. I've heard before that there was, back when the previous director was here, she was doing some work on Middletown, and Director Lucas came in and she did take care of the Short Shores Avenue. So I'm very grateful for the work on those two areas. But the hillside on Middletown has been an issue, and we keep hearing that it's owned by the city, owned by the county, owned by the state, and there's all this different. So I really want to know in writing who actually owns it and who's responsible, because I'm going to go talk to our colleagues if it's anybody else who's supposed to be responsible for it. But the bottom of Middletown to where it meets Short Shores is what I'm interested in. So does anybody know that answer offhand?
A portion of Middletown Road is jointly owned between the city of Pittsburgh and Ingram Borough. And I can get you.
That part. Yeah, no, I know that part. That's not this part. This is the lower part, which is all city.
Okay, I can get you the information offline. I don't have anything for you off the top of my head. And I also, we don't have any, so we know we are expecting to get $1.1 million in neighborhood traffic calming money. We have not selected projects yet to receive that funding, so I can't speak about anything specific right now.
I'm sure it won't be in District 2. But anyway, can you also tell me about the Noblestown Road? There was a letter from State Representative Deasy asked us to send something about Noblestown Road, and PennDOT responded about, I think it was a flashing light to cross the street where the school is. There's a school. Noblestown Road has a lot of speeding issues, and he wanted to put it's a state maintained road. They authorized it, but I believe the city has to pay for it. And I don't know what that cost is, and I don't know what the response is for that. Does anybody have any update on that? Because if it's a cost that we have to put in, I want to make sure it's in.
Okay.
Does anybody have an update?
Let me dig into that. I am familiar with that one. I do recall that. It's a state-owned road, but the city of Pittsburgh would own the traffic control devices. And so
Correct.
Be it a flashing device, RFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. I can't speak to the specifics of that right now. Let me dig into that, please.
Okay. All right. And that's it for me. Other than those issues, I wanted to make sure I got some clarity on those. Thank you. I guess I'll wait for an updated email, and if I don't get it, I'll talk about it next week. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, yeah, so I guess I have a few things, of course, as well. I do want to thank you all so much. I've really enjoyed, chairing the committee, and also just the really astonishing amount of work that you all do, and the needs that you, between 9 council members, the neighborhood, the mayor's office, you all are pulled in many, many different directions, and you do a great job managing that, I think. So one thing, and that sort of, to kind of kick off my questions, is the way so I will say, from before I was on council to now, there has been a significant improvement citywide, not just Domi, but citywide, in at least in the neighborhoods that I see, in community engagement. So it's really skyrocketed. Like the amount of time that folks from the city are in the community, in community meetings, talking to residents, right, and really kind of getting that kind of input, which is great, right? I'm a big proponent of that. However, for you guys in particular, right, we've talked about how Domi is, right, like you step out your door and there's a Domi project, right, whether it's traffic calming or it's, whatever it may be, and the demands, and because of that, right, the demands for community engagement on your team are much, much higher than they are, I think, probably for most other departments. So I'm wondering if, and I'll use Greenfield Avenue as an example, right? So we have Greenfield Avenue traffic calming, the project that been asked for many, many years. There was a petition from the PTO and the neighborhood organization, issues that, and then the traffic calming went in, and then there were people who were unhappy with the traffic calming, and then there's another petition of, of 700 people who don't like this part, they don't like this piece, that piece. And in putting in the Greenfield Avenue traffic calming project, for anyone who's listening in Greenfield, you guys did extensive community engagement, right? I mean, there were walkthroughs. You had folks from DOMI coming, and DOMI and neighborhood services coming, like walking the whole length and talking and hearing directly from residents, like standing on the curb in the morning, being like, here, these are the issues. So, and so now it's like, a little community engagement, and now it's like everyone's gotten a taste of like, oh, we can actually have input. Like the city is really listening to us, right? Like we really can have input into how these projects get implemented and what they look like, and if they're saying. Another one would have been in Squirrel Hill with the Beacon Beechwood, right? And I mean, but it was like, I mean, you guys had meetings, and there was like, the number of meetings and people coming. So what I propose, and we've actually been talking quite a bit about RCOs recently. We talked about getting rid of RCOs, but whether it's with RCOs or not, I'm thinking that going forward next year for you guys, and council members, I think we can work together on this. We need to standardize how you engage with the community. And my recommendation for that would be through the community groups, much in the same way that developers have to have a DAM meeting where it's like, a development activities meeting where they go to the RCO, and the RCO presents it to the community and it's published, whatever, the council member publicizes it. I think it's maybe getting to a place with these projects, not with every little, but with these large scale corridor projects, whatever, where that could conceivably be helpful to continue that engagement, but without having it just be this kind of like wild. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yes. I appreciate, first of all, Mayor Gainey and his administration support us wildly with our projects. And Jan Rather from Neighborhood Services is an extension of our team. Mm-hmm. We could not do what we do without him and without them. So I know you all know that. Like, I know that's clear. We are working to standardize. It's like everything we do, being a young department, it's going to be year by year, grow a bit at a time. Mm-hmm. I am interested in standardizing it. What I have found is that we flirt with burnout heavily when the people who design the work, who manage it through construction, who pay the invoices, who conceive the projects are also the ones who are engaging with the community. We're asking too much of them to do it all at the. If I offer myself, I would be at a community meeting every night.
Right.
And so I'm always going to seek to make sure that most of our projects, when we're not impacting things such as curbside usage as well as travel patterns, we're not going, like, our engage is going to be informed through engage, and then rely on, like you mentioned, the RCOs, or in this case, the mayor's neighborhood services to do that outreach for us. This past year was actually pretty successful for us. Greenfield, I know it's been a bumpy ride. It's been up and down. We engaged heavily on that project,
right.
And this is why when I reference splitting up our neighborhood traffic calming budget into corridor specific projects, our corridor projects are going to have a public meeting or a walkthrough where our engineers are directly interfacing with community. We can only do so many of them a year, but I am interested in standardizing it. I'm interested in working with you and other members of council to see. I'm always going to be concerned about preserving staff, their mental health, frankly. Yep. But there's definitely a way to do it better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think too, I mean, we're seeing it with the Sylvan project, right? Where, I mean, again, and I think by standardizing it for the public, and the engage pages are good, but sometimes that's not enough, right? Just saying like, put it in the engage page, people want to have that meeting. But I think if we can get to something that is similar to the way we require the development activities meetings, right, through zoning and city planning, if we sort of have that same thing for you guys, then we can say, right, this is what we offer. Like when we do when we do a whatever corridor project, when we do a large scale, this is what the city offers. You know what I mean? And then it's folks can see, so they can come to those meetings. Because I feel like the development activities meetings, people are used to that, right? They're used to that's what happens. They see it in their, the email notification from their local RCO, and as opposed to, I think we're getting to a place where there's meetings and then people are like, but I didn't know about it, so we need another meeting because I didn't, and that's just not sustainable, right? With the number of products. So, okay, so that's something that I can commit to working on, with you and other members.
And just a pitch to think of Complete Streets Advisory Group as a potential venue for building whatever that program might look like.
Okay, great. The next thing is around, is probably with the Vision Zero working group, and I know that we've talked about this, but we have we can only do so many projects, right? 20 or so. But we do have demand from small, residential neighborhoods, like, oh, the cars are going, could we slow the cars down, is really coming up with just some sort of quick solutions that neighborhoods can implement, or neighborhood groups or whatever, through encroachment permits. I mean, I'm thinking like planters at curbs to keep people from parking up to the curb so you can see around, you know what I mean, like those little things, or we've talked about temporary speed humps, or painting something in your intersection, right? Because I know that like there's groups that they could get funding to do some art, but we really need to, and again, I think maybe through the Vision Zero team, like come up with, here are 3 small things, like we know we can do them, like we kind of have a standard like package. Not that they buy it from us, but that they can go ahead, and that way the permitting team, I mean, maybe someone comes out to look, but for the most part, right, it would be the same as putting a bench on the side, like where you don't necessarily, just some standards, right? Like if you're going to put a planter to provide visibility around the curb, it has to be here or there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I know the team's been working on that. We often get requests from communities to either upgrade some of the projects that we're able to install to beautify them, or to just do a project, directly. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, we have an encroachment permit process, and it sounds like you're asking for parameters around what a toolkit. And I think a good example reference would be our outdoor dining and retail toolkit that we developed within the last few years. So something like that, but related to safety specifically. We are hopeful that we're going to take our Complete Streets design guidelines over the finish line, so there could be potential through that. And as was already mentioned, the Vision Zero and the Complete Streets advisory groups could be great venues for that as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, just things that are more or less low cost that, a group of neighbors could get together and do, or a community group could, pay for, or whatever. Okay. Yeah, with regard to the grants conversation, I like this idea of a local match trust fund, but it was funny, Councilman Shaw, I was sort of, because I wrote down UPMC nonprofits, like like this is a way, I feel like this might be a way, but again, we always need with this kind of thing, and it's something I've asked PLI, for example, like what would it cost to tear down all of the worst structures, like the number 5s, what are the 5s and the 4s, like so we would need at least I would need a number. Like what is the number to do for you to, at the capacity staff that you're at to have those matches so that we could at least go ask, right? Because I think a lot of times in these conversations about like, oh, pilot program, we should sit down and make a deal and this and that. But we haven't, well, I don't know, maybe we have, but I haven't heard yet. It's like, let's make them say no at the very least, right? Like, let's go with a number that is clear, like this is what we need to do local matches for whatever traffic calming projects or whatever it may be.
One question back to you then. Would this trust fund support positions?
I mean, I would ask to put that together, right? Like if that's, because again, if we are leaving money on the table, if there are grants, I mean, maybe it's like 2 columns, like grants that we could do with current staff and grants that we could do if we could add, add positions to accommodate those projects. But it's hard to ask for money without knowing how much money you need and what you need it for, right? I mean, I've had this experience with just like little playground projects, right? People want to know. They want to know like, oh, well, what is this for? Is it for the equipment or is it for the fence around it or is it for the, so I don't know. It's worth a shot, I think, is if we could have just that number for the grants. And then the last question I have is around landslides. So I know I have a couple places in my neighborhood in the Run, where there's like, people are very concerned about landslides. I mean, we see it happen, right? We saw it happen over the East Busway, I guess, right? It just, there's a landslide, it's scary, someone loses their house. I mean, I guess, what is sort of the process around, so I have on Ivandale, and again, like, I get it, it's a dead-end street, it's one little house, like investing, $1 million+ to shore up is, it's hard to justify, right? But at the same time, like, people are on Naylor Street is another one where, like, the park is coming down and, like, just pushing on the backs of people's houses. So what is the priority? And I mean, do we just wait for something bad to, I mean, I don't know. Or what can we say to like ease people's minds? Or are we are we like regularly checking these little mini potential landslides to kind of make sure that they're okay for now? Or can we even do that?
So, they're a tough issue, of course. I suppose some places have hurricanes, some places have, wildfires, and we have landslides. That is our natural problem we have to deal with. When there are landslides that have perhaps, started to move some, we do try to keep an eye on them. We try to get eyes on them periodically and just keep a sense of, is it stable? Is it progressing slowly? Is it progressing more quickly? Unfortunately, that's mostly from a public safety standpoint, which is important, but we need to close the road. We need to get someone out of the way. They still, if it goes, it goes, and then it becomes a matter of, do we have money to try to fix it? Mm-hmm. I would say we're very much in a reactive state on landslides. I think there is research in southwestern Pennsylvania looking at landslides. The University of Pittsburgh has done some. We've been a little bit participated in that a bit. What do you do? I think it will be tough to ever get fully in front of it. But I think you talk about dead end streets. A lot of these places with landslides are small streets on hillsides, and city planning is actually just getting under contract with, they have a brick grant from FEMA to start looking at both landslides and flooding, and I've been working with them a little bit on that, but I think looking at decision making and like kind of cost benefit and things like that, it's a tough decision because any particular place is someone's home. Mm-hmm. But the financial numbers are something we do have to consider. I think there are areas where we have to consider not repairing things. I think, one hope for that is that there will be a process that comes out of that, because that is, from our standpoint, or from my standpoint, my group, I have the ability to try to find money and try to fix a landslide. But decision making that affects people in that way is something that needs to have policy to be transparent and be equitable and be fair for folks. Some of our hillside neighborhoods are kind of what makes Pittsburgh, but they're also, these things can be very expensive. So it's a challenge, and we continue to address them as we can, but there's a huge amount of need out there.
And just because since I'm here, just particularly with that Ivandale, because I do, do we ever just like buy houses and just be like, you know what?
Do we ever? Yes, it has happened.
Just buy the house and say.
So we actually did in the last couple of years here. We applied for a grant from FEMA through PEMA, the Pennsylvania EMA, to buy out several houses on Newton Street, which is right off of Arlington Avenue. So that was a decision that was made that we're going to purchase those and close the road down because it is just too expensive to fix the road. That's been a bit of a process. We haven't actually done that yet, but we have some grant funding for that, and that is something we will do. In the past, there have been scattered areas where we have purchased houses for landslide issues, but it's very, I think ad hoc is the right word to use. It's kind of ad hoc at this point, just what the situation looks like at the moment that we're in the situation.
Okay.
And just to echo what Eric was saying, planning has that plan that they're working on, but also the comprehensive plan. My hope is that the comprehensive plan is going to have the land use strategy that shows and influences the decision making for when we invest and when we retreat.
And then sorry, I'm just like, because I've got you here in this one project. It's because I have been hearing a lot about it. Also partly because I live there, so you know what I mean? Like, I hear even more about it. Or I live, not on the street, but very close. When a street, so like in that case, the street is broken, but it is continuing to break. Like, is there anything we can do about that? Like, to sort of stop the breakage? I don't know, like maybe break the street off, even, I don't know, right?
Yeah, that's a balancing act. We do have a house there. We're trying to maintain access. We are going to look at the barriers, and we keep, nudging them back as we can, but still trying to maintain access. It's a balancing act. In general, if the ground wants to move, it's tough to stop that without a major project. So the best that we can usually do is try to keep an eye on it and just try to balance access and safety and just react as the situations continue to progress.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't think I have, I think that's it. Thank you all very much, and it's been a long meeting. So I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up. No? All good? All right. Well, with that, I don't have my script. Oh, yeah. So we're going to recess on our budget hearings. Here we go.